What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JB Sports, back again with another one. Chris Eubanks Jr., son of legendary UK fighter Chris Eubanks Sr., and Conor Benn, son of legendary fighter Nigel Benn, are close to finalizing an agreement to fight at a catch weight of 156 pounds at the O2 Arena in the UK. The old heads who have followed UK boxing for the last 2 decades are excited about this matchup. They're reminiscing like Mary J. Blige. This fight is for nostalgia, but this fight is involving a good little man taking on a good big man. We all know what happens when a good big man takes on a good little man. The good big man wins more times than not. So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires, but the UK boxing fans are acting real thirsty, wanting a blown up junior welterweight to take on a full-blown middleweight. Because make no mistake about it, Conor Benn is a junior welterweight masquerading as a welterweight. His skill set allows him to fight at 147, but he's a natural 140-pounder. Make no mistake about it. And he's fighting a full-blown middleweight who has fought as high as super middleweight when he defeated James DeGale in dominating fashion. He didn't struggle at all at that fight, fighting at 168. Power was still there, still had the hand speed that he had at 160 and 154, and now he's finna fight a junior welterweight. Now Conor Benn, best bet is to take on a weight drain Chris Eubanks Jr. Now again, he's fought at 168. This fight's gonna be at 156, but he's now campaigning at 160, so he's basically gonna have to drop 4 pounds. So if he hires a nutrition and he shares the weight properly, he should be okay, and he should win this fight because he is the good big man and Conor Benn is the good little man. So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires, but the UK boxing fans are acting real thirsty wanting this matchup. You know, they're thinking about the fight involving their dads, and that was a great fight, epic battle, but this is a whole different situation. Paulie Malignaggi said this numerous times. There's weight divisions for a reason in boxing. And again, you got a junior welterweight taking on a guy that fought as high as super middleweight. I'm not gonna say he was a natural 168 pounder, but he fought James DeGale, but James DeGale was a faded version of himself. He wasn't the same fighter that fought previously, had fought for 3 or 4 years before that fight. He was not the same fighter. He was past his best days. He was on the back 9 of his career. Make no mistake about it. But again, that ain't got nothing to do with the performance that Eubanks Jr. put on. That probably was his best performance of his entire boxing career. So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires. But Eddie Hearn, the P. Diddy of boxing promoters, always in the video is throwing monkey wrenches in the negotiations. He don't want to see this fight happen. He said at the Chisora Pulev fight that the fight was not happening. When word spread that this might be a likely matchup, he said it was fake news. But a couple of days later, the Daily Star and Garrett Davis, who is the UK's version of Burt Sugar, said that the fight was pretty much a formality, that those 2 guys were indeed going to fight at the O2 Arena. Eddie Hearn said, not so fast, we're still working on details, and now here it is, they're having problems with the rehydration clause. The second day rehydration clause is a sticking point that's keeping this fight from being finalized. Let's say that Conor Benn and Eubanks Jr. get the whole rehydration clause, the second day rehydration clause sorted out. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Eddie Hearn throws another monkey wrench in it. He'll come out with something else that they need to change at the 11th hour because he don't want this fight happening, and I don't blame him. This is his rising young star in the welterweight contender, in the welterweight division. And he don't want him to end up in the same boat Kell Brook ended up in. But at least Kell Brook was a champion when he went up 2 weight classes and lost to Triple G and got his eye socket busted. At least he was a champion at that point. Conor Benn don't even have a title at 147, and he's finna do the same thing. Move up 2 weight classes and take on a naturally bigger guy who might not have the same power as a Triple G, but he does have power. And he is a very athletic guy who is very, very strong for 160. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But this is also about Eddie Hearn unable to land Conor Benn a big fight at 147 due to mostly the fact that 147 is controlled by Al Heyman and the PBC, and the PBC and Eddie Hearn are like oil and water, and they do not get along, not even a little bit. So instead of working Conor Benn into a mandatory position, which will force a champion in a particular organization to face him or vacate their belt, they look like they're going to be going this route. And this is the route that Conor Benn wants to go on, because Eddie Hearn promised him a big fight. He couldn't get him Keith Thurman, who's a PBC fighter. He couldn't get him Eubanks Jr, who's a PBC fighter. He don't want to fight David Avanesian, who's a Frank Warren promoted fighter who fights under Queensberry Promotions. Maurice Hooker is the guy that Eddie Hearn actually wants Conor Benn to fight, but Conor Benn don't look at him as a big fight, nor should he look at him as a big fight. I don't even look at that as a big fight. That's a good fight, but it's not a big fight. Maurice Hooker is another blown up junior welterweight. And like I said, Conor Benn is a blown up junior welterweight. And you can just look at his past opponents. He's fought a lot of 140 pounders. Adrian Granados is a 140 pounder fighting him at 147 when they fought. Chris Algieri was another 140 pounder that Conor Benn annihilated. Van Herndon was not a big welterweight. He defeated him. Samuel Vargas, another 140 pounder that he demolished at 147. So Conor Benn, who's a natural 140 pounder, but has a skill set which allows him to fight at 147, is actually a natural junior welterweight. And you asking him to go up there and fight a full-blown middleweight because the UK boxing fans, the old heads, are thirsty for nostalgia-like matchup. They didn't get AJ versus Fury. They got Fury versus White, which was a one-sided beatdown, and they looking to recreate magic like Nigel Benn, and Chris Eubanks Sr. produced a decade ago. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires, but it's a lot of different things in play here. Eddie Hearn don't want to fight. Eddie Hearn trying to sabotage the fight. But Eddie Hearn has promised his young superstar a big fight. His young superstar is feeling some type of way about the criticism of his past opponents, and he wants to get in there and get a good win over a good name and quiet those critics. But I think he's biting off a little bit more than he can chew, fighting a guy that is big, is as strong, and is as skilled as Chris Eubanks Jr. Now, Chris Eubanks Jr. get wild at times. That can allow for Conor Benn to get inside and get off his combinations. He has fast, explosive hands. But the problem with that is him getting inside. He's going to have to try to work his way in. You know, he don't have the reach advantage, but he can jab to the body and try to get inside that way. That'll probably be a little bit more easier than jabbing up top when you're at a decided height disadvantage. He can be able to do that if he's able to get inside, but he's going to be able to have to go in there and take a chance of getting caught with some big shots. It's just like if you're trying to kick in the front door of somebody and try to rob somebody, and you don't quite know if they're there. It's a chance if you kick open that door, you're going to get a bullet put in your ass. That's the chance you got to take, assuming when you take on that risk of trying to come through the front door. And that's exactly what Conor Benn going to attempt to do if he indeed ends up fighting Chris Eubanks Jr. Because again, he's a guy that's the smaller guy. He's got the shorter reach and he's the shorter height, so he cannot fight this fight from a distance. Now at times he can do what Manny Pacquiao did and a lot of opponents that were taller than him. Jump in, get your shots off and jump back out. And then use angles and stuff like that. That's what Vasily Lomachenko does in a lot of his fights when he's fighting guys that are bigger and taller than him. He can do that, but he cannot make a living of fighting Chris Eubanks Jr. from the outside. If he does that, he's going to come up short in that particular matchup. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Follow me on Facebook, Gerard.Briscoe.3551. Follow me on Instagram, 9707 Gerard. Like, share, and subscribe to JB Sports. The man, the myth, the legend. And I holla.